Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of FrumGuyCooking, where this week we're going to be making eggplant dip. There's a few things that are different about this week's dip when you compare it to the last 2 weeks, and the first one is this. While this dip is simple, it's also a bit of a pachka to make, and it will require several steps. We'll get to the other differences soon, but to start, take the head and the tail off of an eggplant and slice it lengthwise, and then start cutting widthwise. You should not cut it lengthwise again as I showed you here. That was a mistake. And you'll see on the next one that I'm just going to be cutting it widthwise after that first lengthwise cut. Take these pieces and throw them in the biggest bowl that you have. As you see here, these are the sorts of pieces you should be cutting, about 1/4 inch thick. When I make this recipe, I tend to make it double because, as I said, it's a bit of a pachka, and so once I'm doing it, I'm going to try to make it in bulk. And the advantage for that is that the dip will last you at least a month in the fridge, if not longer. So you can make it in large proportions and then eat it as you go. Now that you have all these pieces in the bowl, and hopefully you have a bigger bowl than I do because it barely fit on my end, what you want to do is salt down these pieces of eggplant as much as you can. Now you don't want to go overboard, but you want to have at least a few shakes of salt across every piece. And keep on tossing it, it's okay if the pieces fall out. And what this will do will allow the eggplant, which is a very bitter vegetable, to release a lot of its bitterness. It will sweat out a lot of its bitterness. Then just cover up the bowl with some saran wrap and set it aside. Next thing you want to do is chop up an entire head of garlic. Let's just take off the top and the bottom of the garlic so that all the pieces split apart easily, and start peeling off these pieces of garlic. Now, I know that peeling garlic is pretty boring, and the only thing that's more boring is watching someone peel pieces of garlic, so let's just skip ahead, and okay, all those pieces are peeled. Now we're going to end up mincing this garlic, so really you don't have to chop it that neatly or that finely. Just get a bunch of small pieces, and then eventually that will make it easier to mince. If you don't know how to mince garlic, it's pretty simple. If you Google it, it says to use a two-handed chopping method, run the knife over the garlic repeatedly to mince it. And that's really all you're doing. You have one hand on the handle of the knife, one hand on the blade, and you're just running the blade over the garlic over and over, and then bringing the pieces of garlic back to the middle, and doing it again until you have plenty of fine, small chopped pieces of garlic. Put them aside in a bowl, and let's get back to our eggplant. At this point, the eggplant should have been sweating out all that bitterness for about 2 hours. Go ahead and pour all of that eggplant into a strainer. And now what you want to do is wash it very well, very thoroughly, and get rid of all that salt. You're not going to be able to get rid of every single drop, but you don't want there to be much of a salty flavor. So you want to just wash it as much as you can. There's no such thing here as washing it too much, for at least a minute with a spray. And if you don't have a spray, just use the regular faucet and keep on mixing the eggplant under the stream of water. Throw the eggplant down onto some paper towels and try to get rid of as much water as possible. Since you're going to be frying the eggplant, you want as little splashback as possible from water making contact with the oil. So go ahead and pat the eggplant dry with another layer of paper towels. On the burner, go ahead and pour a few glugs of canola oil into either a saute pan or a frying pan. The flame should be set to medium-high. When the oil gets hot, put down one layer of eggplant in the pan, and try to fill up this pan as much as possible. Flip the eggplant after about 7 minutes on its first side. You want to make sure not to overcook the eggplant, so if you see it start to smoke, make sure you either flip it or take it off the fire. After about another 5 minutes or so, go ahead and remove the pan from the flame so you can take the eggplant and let it drain on some paper towels. Here you can see that I was actually working with 2 pans at once, which I suggest if you feel able to do that, so that your cook time can be reduced. And then go ahead and just repeat the same process. There's really nothing different here, you're just repeating it over and over, and while it does take some time, trust me, the end result will be worth it. If you start running out of paper towel space, don't worry about it, you can just throw down another layer and let the eggplant drain in layers. Now the second thing about this dip is that it's in no way healthy or pretty. It involves what is essentially deep frying, tons of sugar as you'll soon see, and the end product doesn't look all that attractive. But boy oh boy does it taste amazing. So good that even a lifelong eggplant hater like me can't get enough of this stuff. So trust me when I say that all this effort will be worth it. Then what you want to do now is pour all this eggplant into the bowl where you had the garlic, and you're going to add your other 2 ingredients. You're going to take your sugar, some regular white granulated sugar, pour in about 1/3 of a cup, spread it out across the eggplant. Then you're going to take 1/3 of a cup of white vinegar, and again, spread that out. And like any recipe, you will have to learn to do this to your taste. The next thing you're going to do is shred these pieces of eggplant apart using 2 forks facing backwards against each other and pulling it until you have these nice long strands. Go ahead and put this in a container. Try to scrape off all the little pieces of garlic from the bowl, and you're going to leave this in the fridge for a little while so that the vinegar and garlic and eggplant can all work together and break down and really develop that flavor. And then go ahead, put it in the fridge, and just let it sit. And now you're ready to plate up. Normally I wouldn't put so much effort into plating up, but since this is YouTube, and I need to take that Instagram picture that has to look amazing, I'm going to make it look a little fancier than I normally would. And get to eating. Now I ate these all, and I think it's pretty good. The third thing about this dip that makes it different from the previous 2 weeks is that I have never seen this dip in a store. In fact, I've only seen one other person make it, and that's Chef Lieber, who taught me how to make the dip. I hope you enjoy making this, and I'll see you next week.